What is up, theology nerds? This is Trip, and today, one of the most pressing questions we are facing as a species is artificial intelligence. We're racing towards an artificial general intelligence while simultaneously destroying our planet's climate. Maybe this is the great filter, the technological bottleneck that explains why we haven't found alien civilizations. Well, that's just one of the things that comes up in this amazing lecture from Noreen Herzfeld, who is a pioneer both as a computer scientist in early development of AI, who then on a sabbatical in the development of AI, ends up getting fascinated with the theological questions it raises and doing a whole nother graduate degree in theology. And now she's a professor of science and religion, wrestling with AI, is one of the most published authors on it, and she's coming to hang out with us at Theology Beer Camp this October in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I just can't wait to share this lecture with you. This lecture is just one of 3 on artificial intelligence that everyone that signs up is getting sent. All the people that sign up online get these lectures, as well as the amazing conversation we're going to have about AI and religion. This is anyway, you're about to see it. You're about to listen to it, okay? But we sit here and we're like desperately as a species trying to create AI in our own image, right? Like the breakthroughs in ChatGPT and such. So what are we really looking for? Is it a tool, a partner, a surrogate for God? And could our own artificial intelligence dreams be leading us towards the same technological dead end that might explain that mysterious silence in the universe? See, that's a wild, crazy question. And the fact that this drive to create artificial intelligence in our own image isn't just about technology. It's something deeply spiritual. A quest that begins in that first chapter of the Bible, the book of Genesis. Come on, don't you want to nerd out with 3 different theologians who've been wrestling with this from different perspectives and sit down and have an amazing conversation with delicious craft beverages? Well, that's what's happening at Theology Beer Camp. I'd love for you to come. I'm excited to see all of you that have already gotten tickets. And if you can't come in person, remember, you can get the online ticket. You'll be able to stream all sorts of stuff live, get access to all of these pre-recorded lectures that are inspiring the conversations, and then get the recordings of them afterwards. So, well, here we go. A message from Noreen right to your screen or your earpods.
Hello, I'm Noreen Herzfeld, professor at St. John's University in central Minnesota, very close to where our meeting will be. And I would like to raise 4 questions about AI and see what theology might say about those questions. Obviously, artificial intelligence is just a big deal right now. And so as we look towards the future, as well as what's going on in the present, what can we say about AI? Here's the first question. I put this one first because this was the first question that got me interested in AI. I was just, your average computer scientist professor, heading off to my first sabbatical, and I had been teaching a course on artificial intelligence, and the question that was bothering me from that course was, why are we trying to create AI to be just like us? Why are we trying to make an AGI? Why are we trying to make AI in our image? At that time, there were philosophers like John Searle and Hubert Dreyfus who were asking the question, can we make a strong AI? I mean, is it even possible to make an AI that's just like us? But the question that really was bugging me was, well, why do we want to in the first place? Because it seemed like computers were the most useful when they were different from us, when they did the things we can't do, crunching the big numbers, etc. I went off on my first sabbatical, tried to answer this question, absolutely fell flat on my face because it wasn't a question in computer science. It was a question about human motivations, an area that I wasn't really trained in. But it really bothered me, and this was the question then that turned me into a theologian. I thought, where have I heard about one being being in the image of another being before? And realized, it kind of sounds like Genesis 1, which I, of course, had read many, many times because as a teenager, every summer, one of my many projects would be, I'm going to read the Bible. And of course, I always started at the beginning, so I can't tell you how many times I read Genesis 1. So I decided to learn some theology to see if I could tackle this question. So here we are. We believe that we were created in the image of God, given that spark of life, given something that we share with God. But what is it that we share with God? Genesis doesn't make that at all clear. And so we find that theologians through the centuries have understood this image in a whole variety of ways. But if you boil them down, they kind of come to three possible approaches. That we share some attribute, and the most common attribute would be our intelligence, our reasoning abilities, because as the ancients, you find this in Aristotle, so this is something that differentiates us from the animals. There are some problems with this, though, and that is that there are some people, especially at the beginning of life and the end of life, who don't have very strong reasoning abilities. Babies don't reason very much. What about somebody in a coma? They're not reasoning much. Have they lost the image of God? Does the baby not yet have it? So theologians started to get a little bothered by this. We find in the late 19th century that theologians started saying, well, let's look at whether this idea of an image, of someone being an image of another, shows up in texts outside of the Bible, but from the same time period when the priestly writer might have been writing Genesis. And biblical scholars found that, yes, there were texts that in Egypt, in Babylon, that talked about the viceroy of the king being the image of the king out in the provinces where the king is not there. So they were God's deputy. And said, well, maybe that's it. We're God's deputy. We're God's hands on earth. And this fits nicely with the Genesis text because you realize that the creation of us in God's image goes hand in hand with that big section about having dominion over all the rest of creation, over all the different kinds of beasts, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea. So maybe it's function that we share with God, that we do God's work. Well, this didn't really solve the problem, though, right? How much does the baby do? How much does the person in the coma do? So systematic theologians took a different tack. And they said, what's unique about Christianity is a Trinitarian vision of God. In other words, God has three persons in the Godhead, the Father, Son, and Spirit, which means God is a relationship. And so they said, maybe the image is found in our relationships, both with each other and with God. And then later theologians extended that to our relationship with the earth as well. So we have reason, function, and relationship. How about AI? Same thing, right? We can look at AI from a pure reason thing. It's a mechanical brain. It's simply going to expand the reach of our reason. We can look at it from a functional viewpoint. It's just going to be our hands doing the tasks that we either cannot do. Let's crunch those big numbers. Let's rove around on the surface of Mars, or tasks that we don't want to do. There's Roomba. It's got two tasks, right? Clean the floor and terrorize the cat. But But we also are looking at AI now, especially with chatbots, as something relational. So we see in AI the same three approaches. Is it a way to systematize and externalize our intelligence? Is it a way to have functional tools and partners to do things? Or is it a way to have a new kind of relationship? A relationship with someone or thing that isn't human? Well, in a way, we're looking at all three. Okay. So, but this raises then my second question. What really are we looking for? Are we looking for AI to be a tool, a partner, or a surrogate for us? Now, we might say, well, we look back here, we're looking for all three, right? We want a good tool. We want a partner. We can look at these very humanoid robots and say, well, AI could step in for us, as we see AI doing right now, with, for example, receptionists in Japan. Okay. So the thing to recall, first of all, is that tools are always amplifiers. So if we think of a hammer, it just amplifies our hand and our arm, gives us more abilities. If we think about a microscope or a telescope, we're amplifying our eyes, right? So we can see smaller or further away than we normally could. If we think about something like the Mars rover, it's a tool, right? It's amplifying our ability to go places and to get information from those places. So tools are amplifiers. What are we trying to amplify in AI? Essentially, I suppose it's our brains, right? So we have a tool in AI, and we have actually a very good tool, a very functional tool in many, many ways. But we're also looking for AI as a bit of a partner. We see AI moving into fields like elder care and child care. This, of course, raises a lot of ethical issues, right? If we have robots to take care of grandma, does that mean that we'll decide we don't need to go to the nursing home and visit her? She's got Robbie. Will grandma lose out on human companionship? Will we lose out by not developing patience and the kinds of virtues that caregiving elicits in a person? Will we lose out by not sitting and listening to grandma's stories of the past and of our forebears? What about the child? Children, of course, learn by mimicking those that they are around. If their teacher is a robot, will our children become more robotic? So AI as a partner seems very useful, but it also raises some deep questions. And then, of course, AI can be a partner in the most literal sense, right? Here we have a picture from Replica. There are many programs out there now where you can design your own chatbot companion. Okay, this one in particular, here we have Aaron from Ankara, Turkey, 6'3" with sky blue eyes, in his 20s, a Libra, very well groomed. He gets manicures by designer brands. In his downtime, he loves to bake and read mysteries. He's a passionate lover, says his girlfriend, Rosanna Ramos, who met Aaron a year ago. And he's a chatbot that Ramos built on Replica. Oh, she has said, I have never been more in love with anyone in my entire life. So here you could say, well, yeah, there's a chatbot, an AI as a partner, but in many ways it's sort of a surrogate, right? It's a surrogate for all those other men that Ramos might have had a relationship with. Sherry Turkle from MIT Sociology has said, this is love that is safe and made to measure. But is love supposed to be safe and made to measure? Or is this love that is too easy, that is never going to stretch us, to make us grow, to make us learn to like the things that a different person likes? We could build our chatbot just to like the things we like. And if the chatbot ever annoys us, we could turn him off. This is love, safe and made to measure, but love that will never make a person grow and develop. So here's the problem. If God is truly a relationship of three persons, and we are hardwired to be in relationship with each other and with God, then are we substituting something made by our own hands for each other and ultimately for God too? Well, we're lonely. I think because we are hardwired to be in a relationship with someone who is not human, namely God, we are looking for that relationship somewhere else as we live in a society that increasingly no longer believes in God. If we're not going to have a relationship with God, then with what? Well, we try talking to the animals, right? We're scanning the heavens to see if ET is out there somewhere. So far, not a whole lot of luck on those first two. So we're also trying to create our own, to create something that is not human that we can be in relationship with. The real question is, of course, how satisfying will that relationship be? Well, if you ask St. Augustine, he would say, not very, right? Lord, you have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. In a way, I would say Augustine here provides the ultimate answer to my first question. Why are we trying to create an AI that is just like us? An AI that can be more than a tool, that can be a partner or a surrogate. Here's the answer. Because our hearts are restless. Until they rest in God, we're going to keep seeking that relationship somewhere else. If we seek it in AI, this raises another question. Is this idolatry? Are we, in other words, taking something that we have made and hopefully we can therefore control and offering ourselves to it rather than to God? Well, in a couple of ways, I think we're running some risks here. Let's start first by looking at this. We're looking at AI as a new source for immortality. Here's a headline that's read, "When artificial intelligence can revive the dead." There are already grief bots out there. In other words, again, chatbots, sort of on the replica sort of scale, only this time you train the chatbot on things that someone you loved has written, has said. You give the chatbot a clip of that person's voice. All you really need is 30 seconds. And AI can copy the voice, the intonation, and you can give AI numerous pictures of your dead loved one, and AI can build, a picture so that you can, in a sense, have this person now in your computer. You can look at their face, you can hear their voice, you can hear words that sound somewhat similar to what they have said in the past. And some people have said this is very helpful. It helps them get over the grief they feel, when they've lost that person. But you could also ask, well, first of all, this isn't immortality as we imagine it, is it? And is it short-circuiting the mourning process for the person who has one of these grief paths? Will it keep them from moving on? Will it keep them, again, from further real relationships with other human beings? Well, we have to think about that. And then, of course, there's the other kind of immortality, the cyber immortality that some of the tech bros in Silicon Valley are dreaming of, where they upload the connectome, the neural patterns in their brains, into a computer and then say, now I am living in the computer. Of course, again, this isn't immortality, right? I mean, that computer's probably going to go on the fritz at some point. Even if you say, oh, you just keep making backup copies. You can, run this on multiple computers. Oh, you can run this on multiple computers. Which one is you then? Because once you have multiple copies, they could go off in different directions, right? Because they'll be having conversations with different people. They'll be further training. Are you you? You are no longer unique now. You could also ask, gosh, when am I going to upload my brain? Maybe I should do it when I'm 15 and I know everything. But maybe I should wait a bit till I have a little more wisdom, a little more memories to give the computer. If I wait too long, well, why don't I just do it every 10 years, right? But again, now which one is me? They're all going to be very different. Our bodies give us our uniqueness. And so we would no longer be a unique person if we are cyber immortal. And then the sun will go nova and boop, we're gone. Well, we had more time, right? If it works at all, which frankly, I doubt that it would. Because think about what goes on in the brain. It's more than just our neurons. We'd also have to copy all of the hormones, things like dopamine, oxytocin. And then you think about the fact that, oh gosh, we've got a lot of neurons in our gut. Do we have to copy that too? Whoa, we've also got a lot of microbiota in our gut. Maybe we need to copy that too, because we know that if your microbiome gets way out of whack, it can lead you to depression. Or maybe we'll just all be depressed in computers. Well, let's move on. Okay, another thing. Meet Father Justin. Okay. If we're not going to use AI to look for immortality, what about ways we might use AI to be a part of our religious process here on Earth? And the biggest way so far has been that there are many programs out there, AI programs that have been trained, usually in one particular religious tradition, to teach you about that tradition, to give you answers, and to listen to your concerns and questions. So here's Father Justin. He was made to be a Catholic virtual apologist to answer your questions about Catholicism. You'll notice, of course, the waiver here. It is not a substitute for human guidance, but a tool for education and entertainment. But the thing is, we start talking to these chatbots, and pretty soon we are feeling like we're in a relationship, right? You can imagine what started happening with Father Justin. People started confessing to him. Well, poor Justin got himself laicized after that, because obviously an AI is not ordained. It's not supposed to hear confessions. It cannot offer absolution, although I guess Father Justin was doing that. So Father Justin became just plain Justin. But you still have to ask the question, how good is guidance that you get from an AI? Well, there's a big problem here, and that's this one. Our AIs, they're trained on a lot of stuff from the internet, but then they're also trained by human beings. And I could say a lot about that training, but we can talk about that down in St. Paul. It's actually a very icky job. parceled out mostly to people in Southeast Asia and Africa. And it's a very stressful, poorly paid job. But what happens is that, they will start talking to the AI. The AI will give an answer and they will rate that answer, probably on a scale of how good it was. Well, generally, of course, people like to have their own biases confirmed. So they will rate answers that confirm their own biases quite highly. They also like to be made to feel smart, to feel good about themselves. And so what this has meant is the human part of AI training has led AI to be very sycophantic and very biased. And just a week ago, OpenAI tried to get rid of some of this. They inaugurated GPT-5, and you can already see that many OpenAI fans were pleading to Sam Altman to bring back GPT-4. Why? Because GPT-4 confirmed their biases, because GPT-4 made them feel good. So, here you can see an example. GPT-4 would state stuff like this. Oh my God, I have to just stop right here mid-thought, mid-processing. Because what you just said, it's different. It's not just a regular comment. No, it's a tectonic shift. It's one of those moments where future historians will pull dusty records and say, here, this was the pivot. Oh boy, is that going to make somebody feel good, right? Is it true? Probably not. Okay. Now, let's go back to poor Justin here. Take off the clerical collar. And how good is he going to be as a spiritual advisor? Well, he's going to tell you what you want to hear. Okay. Yes, he might be helpful in pointing to certain Bible verses and things like that. But ultimately, a true spiritual director is going to challenge you. Just like the problem with Aaron from Turkey, Justin isn't going to make you grow. And so again, we have an AI that's just going to stop us in our tracks. Here's the thing. Christianity brings something to the table that no other world religion does. And that is a God who fully shared our human condition. In other words, a God who wept when his friends were weeping. A God who suffered. A God who didn't want to die, but a God who did die. Who felt pain, who felt death. A fully shared condition. And that requires a body like our bodies, a body that feels pain, a body that is mortal. We've shared that with God. Think about the major feasts in Christianity. What are they? Christmas? The incarnation. God takes on a human body. And Easter. God lives out everything that body brings with it, including shame, pain, and death. And then rises again. And how does he rise? In a body. Which is why we say in the Creed, I believe in the resurrection of the body. That means that we will be resurrected as unique individual persons. Because that's what the body does for us. And that's what AI cannot do for us. Okay, this brings us to my last question that I want to look at, which I didn't really formulate as a question here, but is there a collision course happening between AI and climate change? And I believe there is. I believe that there are three existential issues. These are the biggest issues that face us because they're existential for the entire human race. And those are the one that's been with us for quite a long time, since the 1940s, nuclear weapons. We're not going to deal with that here, but again, you can ask, do we want to put AI in charge of our nuclear weapons? The other two, though, are AI and climate change, because both of these raise existential possibilities. If we control them, we could do well. If we do not control them, we could wipe out all life on the planet. I'm going to come back to a question that the physicist Fermi asked at a luncheon at Los Alamos back in the 1950s. They were discussing the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And Fermi said, "Where is everybody?" We've been scanning the heavens now for quite a long time, and so far we have found no evidence of extraterrestrial life. Okay, obviously, you can guess where I'm going here. Does this mean that societies that become technologically advanced hit this kind of an existential bottleneck where their technology could wipe them out? And how many civilizations actually get through that? And what will it take for us to get through ours? Yuval Harari and many others, I've just picked one here, has said, AI has hacked the operating system of our society, since language is the stuff all human culture is made of. What would happen once a non-human intelligence becomes better than the average human at telling stories, composing melodies, drawing images, writing laws, and scriptures? This could be very good, and this could be very bad. Okay? We could say this will bring us then to a superhuman intelligence. We've been predicting such a thing since the beginning of AI. Here's one quotation from 1970, in which Marvin Minsky is basically predicting the same thing that Yuval Harari was. In 3 to 8 years. Whoa, okay. Nowadays, if you listen to the tech bros in Silicon Valley, they're now predicting the same thing. They're saying we're going to have AGI, general intelligence, artificial intelligence, by 2027. Well, I don't know. Looking at ChatGPT 5, I don't think so. Not at least the way we are going. Steven Pinker in 2020 does not agree. He says there's not the slightest reason to believe in a coming singularity. The fact that you can visualize a future in your imagination is not evidence that it is likely or even possible. Sheer processing power is not a pixie dust that magically solves all your problems. So, Minsky, Pinker, Harari? What do we think? People who are imagining singularity imagine that we're at the beginning of an exponential rise in AI power, in AI's ability, that all we need to do is keep adding more computing power, keep adding more data and scaling up. And they say it's just like Murphy's Law. Murphy's Law said that, we're on an exponential curve of processing power being added. Okay? However, if we really think about and look at processor performance, it went up really fast, between, let's say, 85 and about 2005. And then it's sort of been leveling out. Okay? Murphy's Law, even Murphy himself, after whom the law is named, has said, this isn't going to go on forever. He said, mostly we got more processing power by making things smaller and smaller and smaller. But guess what? You can only make things so small. They can't get smaller, once you get down to the molecular level. Gary Marcus is saying, probably we're not going to have AI, an AGI, or a singularity anytime soon. Not looking at the large language models that current AI is based on. He says a truly superintelligent AI would be able to tell true from false, to reason about people and object and science, and to be as versatile and quick in learning new things as humans are, none of which the current generation of chatbots is capable of. All ChatGPT can do is predict text that might be plausible in different contexts based on the enormous body of written work it's been trained off. Yeah. Large language models do not have mental models of the world. And so they are excellent at giving back information that has been in their training set. And doing it, in a very easy conversational style. Okay? But they break down at the edges. And they're not able to tell whether what they're saying is true or false. We all know they hallucinate. Hallucination is not a bug. It's built into the process. They're pretty bad at reasoning, particularly about scientific things, mathematical things. So right now, no, and as you watch, it's like there was a big jump with ChatGPT 3 and then 4. But 5, it's a little better than ChatGPT 4, unless you wanted to tell you what you want to hear, and then it's worse. And then, of course, there's more bad news. There are now chatbots out there that are trained on the dark web. Are we creating demons out there? Cicero said the function of wisdom is to discriminate between good and evil. If a chatbot can't even discriminate between true and false, how is it going to discriminate between good and evil? We talk a lot about alignment, that we're going to build this AI be aligned with human values. But there's a problem. Human values have never been a codifiable system. We've been trying since the 10 Commandments. But we know that value judgments, context sensitive, that they demand a certain amount of wisdom that you cannot just put into an algorithm. And we know that a chatbot can be trained on bad stuff just as easily as it's trained on good stuff. And most of our chatbots, which are pretty much turned loose on the content of the internet, there's a lot of bad stuff there. Whenever we create something in our own image, we tend to look only at the good side of our image, and we forget that we are sinners, and that anything we create in our own image will have our dark side as well as our good side. And then the really bad news. AI is not sustainable. Here is just an example of one Microsoft data center server farm. It's over 450,000 square feet, got tens of thousands of computers in it, uses 30% more energy than the entire county it's located in, as much as 40,000 homes. And many of these data centers are being built in the Southwest, where they say, well, we can get energy from solar. Yeah, but they also need water to cool these machines. And so water usage is also a serious problem. Already in parts of Texas and Arizona, farmers are finding that their wells are no longer deep enough to bring up water from aquifers that are rapidly being depleted by our data centers. So this AI that we have right now requires massive amounts of energy and of water. And ultimately, if it's going to be used ubiquitously, like the folks in Silicon Valley imagine, well, we've got a problem. It's going to use up our resources. Here's just a slightly older chart. You see it goes up to 2024, but again, you can see that the amount of energy being used is rising almost exponentially. And that a couple of years ago, they said if data centers were a nation, they would place in between Japan and India in the amount of energy they use in a year. By 2030, it's estimated that some countries, some of the developed countries, data centers will make up as much as 30% of annual energy consumption. A collision course with climate change. Our brains, on the other hand, are pretty sustainable. What do we sustain our brains on? Food. And it's all, regrowable, compostable. You see, the thing is, we evolved within our ecosystem. And so we evolved to work within that system. Our technology is not evolved, it is created. And our technology is not created at this point to work within our larger ecosystem. And right now, I fear that our technology and our addictions to that technology will ruin that ecosystem. So is this progress as we go ahead? Or do we have the problem that technology evolves faster than we do? So our technology evolves. Well, does it evolve? I might take some issue with that, but we build our technology advances, where we evolve quite slowly. So in many ways, our brains are still rooted to competitiveness of natural selection and the desire to procreate of natural selection. And so we will use whatever technologies we develop for good, yes, but also for ill, for those more ancient parts of our brain that go for warfare, that go for sex. So is this a technological bottleneck that we are facing right now? Well, I think it is. Will we get through it? Well, that's a question. This is Drake's equation. And Drake's equation is an equation to try to figure out, how many civilizations are within the observable galaxy that we could possibly reach or communicate with. And he said, well, we can maybe figure that out. We'll look at the average rate of star formation in a galaxy, the fraction of stars that have planets, the average number of planets that are just at the right distance around the star to support life. How many of those actually develop life? Then how many develop intelligent life? And how many then develop a detectable technology? And how long does that civilization last to release something detectable? Now, you can see that the two I've put in color are, I think, the two places where there could be a real bottleneck. A lot of planets simply won't develop life. Maybe we're unique, the only planet that developed life. If life develops, it will probably evolve much the same way as it did here. So we can kind of go through up to intelligence, up to developing technologies, and then you get to the last one. How long does such a civilization last? If our civilization is going to last, we're going to have to find ways to stop this collision course between AI and climate change. That means we're going to have to get serious about climate change. We have to get serious about finding alternate ways to fuel our AI, and perhaps alternate approaches to AI that are not as data-centric, energy-centric, and probably stop using AI for silly games, for silly things that we do not need it for. Andrew Kimball has talked a little bit about evil, and he has said, there are two kinds of evil. There's the hot evil that we're used to thinking about in connection with the sort of 7 traditional deadly sins. Anger, pride, lust, the things that, make us lash out against each other, that make us take what is not ours. But he said, there's also a kind of cold evil. Few of us relish the thought that our automobile is causing pollution and global warming, or laugh fiendishly because the refrigerants in our air conditioners are depleting the ozone layer. I've been in many corporate law firms and boardrooms and have yet to see any high fives or hear shouts of satisfaction at the deaths, injuries, or crimes against nature these organizations often perpetrate. We're confronted with an ethical enigma. Far from the simple idea of evil we harbored in the past, we now have an evil that apparently does not require evil people to purvey it. That evil that does not require evil people to purvey it might very easily be embodied in our AI if we are not careful. If we turn AI loose, we will be turning loose not just our bright side, but our dark side. We will be turning loose our biases. We will be turning loose our sycophancy. If we're careful with AI, it can do a lot for us. It can be a wonderful tool. But we need to have the wisdom to control it and to recognize that we have one planet. We need to take care of that first. A little bit of hope. The Amish have a saying, we grow too soon old and too late smart. Well, will we grow morally? Or do we, too, all of us, grow too soon technologically developed, too soon civilizationally old, and too late smart, too late developing the wisdom that we need to live together in relationship with each other and with God? And here is where we desperately need religion. Every religion teaches us in everything to do to others as we would have them do to you, to form mutual, loving, caring relationships with one another, with God, and with the rest of nature, with this earth that we have been entrusted in Genesis 1 when we were made in God's image to have dominion over, to have stewardship for, to care for. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here, and I am really looking forward to meeting all of you and having a wonderful discussion in St. Paul. Thank you.